universe. Anyway, that's just a few thoughts.
No, they're excellent thoughts, and you're right on. And this sort of taps into something that I can talk about later or now, whenever. But this whole realm of quantum biology that is really it's taking off. It's very early stage, but the fact that we are finally in certain circles understanding that the weirdness of the subatomic realm of particles that exist in two places at one time and their interconnections and so forth are not just events that are capable of being studied at the extremely low temperatures and the really small, but the fact that a lot of this stuff is now sort of pointing in the directions for answers in large, wet, warm organisms, and whether that is topics like how birds fly thousands of miles by tapping into the magnetic fields around them, or how plants are so very effective at photosynthesis, or how our minds work, and how you mentioned in the holographic universe, how information, the term, collapses into this reality at a certain point in time, yet is everywhere simultaneously, really provides very interesting paths to, not just have the birds and the plants take advantage of it, but,
touched on all of this, I'm sure, age reversal, reanimation. But
let's go into it in more detail. I first wanted to ask Ira one question. Are you working with Dr. Aubrey de Grey and his conferences on, aging?
I hang out in similar circles as Aubrey. We approach things somewhat differently. Aubrey and his group is much more into the, looking at the human body as a mechanism, a car, something that you fix. You scrape the rust off, you replace the parts, and you're as good as new. We are from the other camp that basically says, we're not an automobile. The human body is an organism, not a mechanism. A machine represents a group of parts that work together that have a defined function, and together it all performs a task. Organisms, on the other hand, unlike being purposed from outside, they're purposed from within. They are emergent. It acts on its own behalf. It self-organizes, self-produces, maintains itself, and regenerates. And so we come much more from the angle that the true answers to aging and disease reversion are going to be not looking at us like a car, but in looking at us like what we and all the other organisms on this planet are, which is living, self-organizing entities that have the intrinsic capability to be 1 year old or 100 years old and to move in both directions. That's the long answer to that. We hang out in the same circles, but we have distinctly different approaches to how to get this done.
And then I have one more question, and I'll pass it back to TJ. My husband and I are Anunnaki researchers, and the Anunnaki are going into the ancient aliens. They're the creators of humanity. They're the geneticists that designed us, and they use their DNA to make human beings. We at one point had extreme long lifetimes, as indicated in the Bible. Thousands of years. The Anunnaki can live it to the millions of years, and they are humanoid like us, and we have their DNA. And so the theory is that they just shut off that 256 strands of DNA that are off. In there is the longevity DNA, or what allows us to live an extreme, lifetimes in thousands of years, not hundreds of thousands of years. and it's just an off switch. Have you ever thought about that and explored that possibility that junk DNA is really something that if we could figure out how to turn it back on, we might have these abilities like telekinesis and telepathy, and they were turned off. The theory is that they were turned off to control us because, you know, we were as smart as they were, and so they had to shorten our life expectancy and turn off our DNA so we wouldn't take over because there was only 900 of them, and, you know, we kept breeding rapidly. They had difficulty breeding, but we were breeding like rats, you know, and so they had to figure out some way to dominate us. So they turned off 256 strands of DNA, including longevity. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a fascinating topic. You brought up, and just for the audience, you brought up the topic of junk DNA, and for those that are unaware of what that means, you know, of the 25 or so thousand genes that all of us humans possess that are listening, that 25,000 genes only represents about 1% of your entire genome. The rest, which is classified as junk, or was originally classified as junk because at the end of the Human Genome Project, most folks didn't want to accept that it was there for anything other than remnants of an evolutionary path, and it was non-functional. But very importantly, and Jan bringing this up, yes, it clearly has function. As said, that our genome didn't fall out of the sky. It's been built upon and worked upon, you know, from our perspective, by unique forces over the last 3.5 billion years. And so within that, what we'll call architecture, lies a lot of answers. Maybe answers to things that we haven't even answered questions for yet, but clearly the answers, in our opinion, are not in the genes because, you know, you find 99.2% of all the genes that we have in chimpanzees, and you find 92% in the pufferfish, and on and on and on. So the genes really aren't that special. It's everything in between. And that 99% of the genome, which we once thought was junk, is clearly not that. And the more we understand it, yeah, I believe we're going to uncover a lot of really interesting stuff.
Cool. TJ, back to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't know if I muted myself or not. Okay, this has gone pretty well considering. Steve didn't come in. I think he would have been a great addition, you know, and we'll have to get him back, folks. He's maybe on another night or something for more chemistry, but he would have been a great person for you to meet too. Ira, pastor, he was a chemist and works in the alien contact and using equipment and stuff like that. But where should this go now? Because there's so much you had for us to cover in topics: biological suspended animation research, hibernation, quantum biology. I don't know. Where do you want to go with this, Ira? You have plans for sharing? You want to talk about the mosquito, or what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I can walk through. You know, we can start at the beginning and reintroduce just a little of the basics of what we think about and how we tap into the natural world and the 3.5 billion years before us to try to solve some of these problems. I can talk a little bit about the basics, and then if you want to throw questions left and right and come up with other topics as we go through them, that's fine. If I'm here and capable of doing it all.
We have a complete hour.
Good.
Okay, we have a complete hour left. It's amazing. It seems like tonight's going super slow. I'm not sure why, but we'll figure that one out. So telomeres. Tell us about that, because they've realized in space you can live longer. I don't know, and I've heard that in one of the science events about consciousness in space, and they found this from the astronauts going up, and they have to work out 35 minutes a day just to keep up their muscles and stuff, because in space you don't need all this mass. And so we need to talk about what we think space travel is And then I'll just go out on a limb here. In some of my memories that I don't know where they come from, but I came to Earth with these, and maybe you can help me, is having memories of being in another planet, some say Mars, or just having in my DNA, it feels like, I guess like you said, these animals remember things. I'm really curious to find out how we're scientifically going to prove this. But so I've been watching a lot of consciousness science shows, and very quirky. I don't know what you'd call them there on YouTube. But can you help me out here? Because when they started talking telomeres, I tuned in and I thought of you. That's when I thought, I need to get him back on here, with my daughter having leukemia and all that. But there's something to the history of us living longer, and it's in the Bible, thousands of years older, Methuselah, even Moses, certain people, but some of us more than others. And I have some memories I don't come from, but recently, which I did not bring up with Jan on here, and I should have, was the fact that when I was a few years back, 2011 or so, there was this I don't know if it was energy or entity, came in light, like doing signs, like I don't know if you call them crop circles or what, but I did write about it, so I'd have some historical knowledge. But I still, to this day, it woke me up thinking about it. I had anxiety over it because I knew I needed to talk to you about it. And it had to do with longevity and space, but a different type of travel, and where the memories come from, and could they possibly be, would they be in the junk DNA, or would they be in the telomeres, and how does that relate to your future? Because consciousness has to have something to do with the biological or the destruction thereof. However, the consciousness keeps going, or does it? Because this thing that came to visit me made signs that I didn't recognize other than the infinity squared. But I know that it came in like light and made all these things. But then when my husband came in the door, it went and hid behind this metal stand I had for breads. And I asked him if he could see it. He noticed. He was like, yeah, what? But he was reading the mail and summoned through it and walked through the kitchen. And then it came out and it left. So it was shy. But it did all these weird things. I don't know where to put that in my intel. Are the other thing, the ancient thoughts and the new thought teachings. So I have the ancient memories, but I have the new thought that I don't even know how to explain it. Can you help me? Okay, go for it.
I'll take a stab at it, but let's start from because you started off with you were watching a show about telomeres, and so let's start there because they're very small, and they're a very small piece of the puzzle, but they'll lead somewhere, and then I think we might have some answers to some of the questions as we delve into this. But basically, for people that are unfamiliar, just really short and dirty, telomeres are these basically sequences of DNA that are at the end of your chromosomes. They sort of have a purpose of stabilizing the DNA in your cells. As your cells divide, they technically get shorter, and then over time, as they get shorter and shorter, your DNA unravels and sends out certain signals that cell is damaged and needs to go, either by being destroyed or shutting down and becoming senescent. And it is one very important but small part of the aging puzzle, because it is involving your DNA. But you, me, everybody listening, is much more than our DNA. DNA, genes, do absolutely nothing on their own. They are just repositories of information in a biologic form. They can't build anything. They can't operate on their own. They just take their directions, what I'll call from above. And let's discuss for a minute what that above is. I'm not talking about stuff in the sky yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. When I talk about above, I'm talking about a vast architecture of control systems that our body uses that send messages down to our DNA, that modulate their function. These include things like biomechanical forces.